What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Chris Raybon, and this is our Super Bowl 59 betting preview. Today, we're going to build our Super Bowl six-pack of bets with the help of my co-host, the Prime Minister of Degenerate Nation, Stuckey. Stuck coming off a good week for both of us, 2-1. You're within striking distance here. I think you'd have to go perfect 3-0 here, but good stuff. And how you feeling about the Super Bowl?
Good, yeah, it was a good conference championship weekend. I think I went 9-2 overall. My only two losses were Noah Gray, who let me down. I don't know, he was just a blocking cone the entire game, which was unfortunate. But yeah, Goddard came through. Worthy scored. Worthy rushing was easy. And then I just had a bunch of live bets in the Bills Chiefs game. I just kept betting Bills will go down. I would bet them live. Then I would bet the Chiefs. And just kept doing that. Just same with the Ravens Bills. I plan on doing that in this game too. So if the Chiefs go down, we'll look to bet them live. If the Chiefs go up, and I'll look to bet the Eagles live, and hopefully, as most Chiefs games do, I'll be trying to kind of just straddle a Chiefs like 1 to 3 point win. Uh, would be the goal. But here we are again with the Chiefs in the Super Bowl again and a recent repeat. If it wasn't for betting, I would not be looking forward to the Super Bowl. But luckily, we can bet on it. So, of course, I'll be looking forward to having a bunch of action on the game. And I think it's going to be a competitive one. And should be close throughout. That's the one good thing with the Chiefs. You might get tired of them, but more times than not, they give you an entertaining game that's close.
Yeah, and I mean, so does Saquon Barkley these days. So that's really the matchup I want to see. We've had all this talk over the past decade plus about the running backs and they don't matter, and now we're going to test the theory because you got one team propped up by its quarterback and another team that's really taken off to another level because of a running back. So I'm excited to see that matchup, but we'll get into our six pack. Just want to let all the listeners know if you are watching or listening on your phone and you want to instantly tail any of today's picks, just visit the brand new actionnetwork.com/bet now. That's actionnetwork.com/bet now. We've got links for all the picks, all in one landing page, and you can click those links on your mobile device. It opens up your betting app with the bet slip for that pick. Extremely convenient, great way to tail. And it's all at actionnetwork.com/bet now. All right, Stuck. Let's get into our Super Bowl six pack. We got the Chiefs against the Eagles. Chiefs are considered the road team. The Chiefs are favored by 1.5. The total is 49, 6:30 p.m. Eastern on Fox. So we're going to get a Tom Brady Super Bowl right off the bat. Should be interesting, to say the least. Stuck, you are up first, so we'll kind of break down the game as we go through our picks. But where are you going first?
All right, for my first pick of the Super Bowl Sunday six pack, I'm going with the Philadelphia Eagles first half plus 1.5 out there at FanDuel, which is what I played. Plus a half is fine too. But I paid a little bit more for the plus 1.5. Every point is important in the Super Bowl, especially over the course of a half. Even more so when you consider how slow Super Bowls have started historically. I don't know if it's nerves or, no one wants to make a mistake early on. First quarter unders have been a good bet historically, but markets adjust. That's why this is at 9.5. I think 5, 10 years ago probably would have been at 10.5. But and also you have Jake Elliott, who you never know when he's gonna whiff on an extra point. So having 1.5 was worth the price differential to me. So when this is the bet I made last year too. I had
Yep.
San Francisco first half. I'm like, why? I'm not trying to. Where do the Chiefs have an advantage in this game? If we look at
Quarterback.
the rosters position by position, like offensive line, give me the Eagles. Wide receiver, give me the Eagles. Running back, give me the Eagles. Defensive line. probably close, but I'll take the Eagles. Linebacker with Dean's injury, it's probably a wash. Secondary, I'll take the Eagles. Like across the board. Tight end, I'd even say like, Kelsey in the playoffs is a different animal, but it's pretty close. It's the quarterback and the
Coaching.
coach.
Yep.
And so I think the Eagles are the better team, but what's most likely to happen in this game is what happens in most Chiefs games is that they're down and Mahomes will find a way if it's close, which I think this will be. And the adjustments in the second half will probably favor Kansas City, just like they did last year. And for what it's worth, like we've seen the Chiefs in 4 Super Bowls since 2019. Here's what's happened. 10-10 tied at the half. They won 31-20. Down 21-6. They lost 31-9. Down 24-14, won 38-35. And down 10-3, won 25-22. Last 4 Super Bowls they've not held a lead at the half. So I think just roster quality, I think the Eagles are the better team. So I'll take the points in the first half. I I do also think that this Chiefs defense, I think Spagnuolo's probably going to have some good adjustments at the half, but the Chiefs defense, I've been screaming this for a while, is overrated. They benefited from so many injuries, opposing injuries all year long, from week 2 on, almost every week, especially opposing offensive lines, which is why I think their run defense is even a bit overrated, and their run defense has been trending poorly. But this defense, I think in general, outside of like Spags and him dialing up blitzes, which we'll see how Hurts deals with that, especially as the game progresses and there's more pressure drives. But I think this defense is vulnerable. I think the Eagles' defense is elite, and they've shown that. I mean, yes, they had an easy schedule, but I just go back to games against Cincinnati, Baltimore, where you could really see the quality against great competition. So I like the Eagles in the first half. It's interesting. Well, we'll talk about props and break down the matchup a little further as we go through some of our bets. But yeah, I'll take the points in the first half. I like the way I see this playing out is similar to San Francisco, Kansas City last year.
I mean, given that, and I do agree with you to an extent. So last year you had the Eagles first half, and I had Chiefs full game. So I'll just give that pick out now. It's not going to be my one of my 2 pointers, but let's just talk about this right now. So I'll go Chiefs money line for the purpose of the show, since that -125, as is your first half bet. But Patrick Mahomes, 28-9-1 against the spread, is a favorite by 3 or more, or an underdog, winning by 4.4 points, hovering, excuse me, by 4.4 points per game, 9-2 in the postseason. Some ways I think that the Chiefs are going to have to win here. Number one, RPOs. I think that's an advantage where Philadelphia's defense has been good overall against RPOs, but more so against runs. Against passes, they're just 15th in success rate. We've been seeing the Chiefs do a lot more of that lately. And I think if you look at what this Chiefs offense has to do, I think the fact that they have been getting the ball out quicker does help a little bit. I thought that, looking at that Philly-Washington game, that Washington was hanging around there if it wasn't for the turnovers. Like, it was a struggle, but you could see that with a quarterback who could make some throws, who could evade some pressure, that they were kind of hanging in there, and then it was just you just couldn't overcome those turnovers. So I expect the Chiefs obviously to be better in that area. And I also think, I'm not saying this necessarily is going to translate, because I thought the Bills were kind of idiotic in the way they kept calling their tush push, and it's like always Josh Allen to the left. But the Chiefs did get a couple stops there. The Commanders did get a stop late. I think it was on a 2-point conversion against the tush push. So you could have a situation where you make the Eagles think about it a little more. Maybe, do we hand off to Saquon here? You do have the issues with the Eagles' interior line. Are they going to be 100%? That's big against Chris Jones. So those are just some of the areas I think that the Chiefs are going to have to take advantage of in this spot, and I think they can. And then I just look at Philadelphia's offense, and I know they're coming off the 55-point just monster showing. I don't think anything's wrong with Hurts or injury wise as as much. I think he definitely had some issues going laterally, straight ahead. He was fine, but I don't think it's gonna majorly affect the game. But if you look at just the playoffs, once Hurts came back, I know his first game was kind of the worst and he got better. So kind of writing it off as, okay, just straight up rust or, coming off the concussion. But if you just zoom out a little bit, Philadelphia played a defense that was really good, great, in terms of metrics in the Packers. The Packers defense had really come up down the stretch. 22 points, that kind of lull in that between, I think it was the first quarter when they got that easy turnover and scored, and then into the second half they really where they started putting away the game. There was a big lull there. Second game against like a mediocre defense in the Rams, that's when the Eagles, 28-22, defense almost let them down, but that was when Hurts was just getting sacked a lot. I don't expect that to happen indoors as much, and then the 55 was against the Commanders, who combined just a bad defense with turnovers. So Chiefs, I still put them in that good. Yeah, I know you think they're a little overrated. I still put them in that good group, like closer to the Packers, because the Packers didn't have Jair and whatnot and lost some guys. But I think that combined with the Spagnuolo game plan will be able to keep the Eagles to a respectable total. And then it's just on the Chiefs offense, which I think, with this quick game, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be I don't think there's going to be many explosives, but the fact that you have Worthy and you have Brown now, you're going to kind of make them make some choices. Do you put Cooper DeJean on a guy like Kelsey? Do you just kind of play it straight up? Do you do any shadowing? Do you play, how much man do you play? You're going to put some stress on this Eagle defense as well. And I think, the Chiefs kind of collecting this depth on the skill positions is going to help them compared to a team like Washington, where it just seemed like their skill guys were just overmatched at the end of the day. Like even when they got catches, it was like, oh, we're just going to target these guys and make them fumble. And so that's kind of how I see the game playing out. I think it will be a close game. I don't think that Saquon is as likely to bust off a big run here, but that's still a danger. And I think that's where Spags is going to come in, and we'll see if what his best shot is. But I do trust Spags in times like this. So I am rolling with Kansas City on the money line. Don't mind the 1.5 either, because all these games generally are 3 or more. But I'll take the money line here. Kansas City minus 124.
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes 8-0 against the spread and straight up as a favorite of under a field goal or an underdog in the playoffs. Pretty insane. You mentioned Barkley, so part of me wants to fade Barkley,
right,
across the board, and I'll give you some of the reasons why I'm inclined to do that. Now, from a prop perspective, I think like if you want to fade these really popular players, it's best to wait
yeah,
until later in the week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Sharper money will then come in on the unders, but public has a say, and especially the most popular players. But the reason I don't know if I'm going to end up doing it is because I do think that this Chiefs run defense is overrated. But number one, the Eagles usually play from ahead, like all season long.
yep,
Right? They're playing from ahead. Barkley's getting a lot of carries in that game script. So this game, they're much more likely to be passing more. Number two, they don't usually play another team that can control the ball like they do. Right? So time of possession, like these are two time of possession monsters who
yeah,
can just have long drives that can either keep Mahomes and or Barkley on the sideline. And then number three, his numbers are, I mean, I just think that they're inflated because it's a Super Bowl. So like under rush attempts, under longest rush, even under rushing yards, they all jumped out to me as possibilities. Do you have any thoughts on Barkley?
yeah. I'm about 8 yards under his rushing prop. Just I think the market's around 115. I'm around 106, 107. So definitely see some value there, and then that would kind of translate into the longest rush as well. And that's what it really comes down to, because that's another thing,
Yeah, is he going to break a long one? Because then
right.
he probably goes over, and then he goes over his longest rush. Like they're all correlated.
Yeah, well, except the attempts, because if you get a
Correct,
70-yard
correct.
run, so
It hurts the attempts. Yeah.
right. But the interesting thing is, I mean, and this is kind of where this game hangs in the balance is there's been, outside of the long runs, like there has been stretches where Barkley has been contained by pretty much all three of the defenses he's faced in the playoffs. It was just these long runs. I mean, Washington gives one up on the first play of the game, just absurd. But there's been long stretches where the success rate has been down, and it's been a struggle. So
Well,
that's
it's the
really what
playoffs.
I'm.
Everyone's focused. The whole entire
Yeah,
game plan's focused on
like,
him.
yeah. So that's what I'm kind of anxious to see is how long can the Chiefs kind of hold him in check? Because I would think if you could kind of hold him to in the first half, let's say, without a long run and actually get a lead, that changes things too. So I'm just interested to see how exactly the Chiefs are going to play it. I mean, it's hard to control, obviously, or everyone else wouldn't have been gashed like this. But I just think it's interesting that it's for a guy averaging this many yards per carry and whatnot, the success rate is actually a little bit lower than you'd expect. And that's kind of what we always known with Saquon is that he's kind of a feast or famine guy. It's, this offensive line has smoothed out a lot of the issues here, but that the health of those guys in the middle also kind of plays a somewhat of a factor here. But yeah, I think just how many and when he's able to break a long run will go a long way to determining this
Yep.
game. But yeah, all right, before we get into our last two picks each, I just want to say that we are all gamblers here. And one of the worst things when you're trying to place a wager is having issues with funding your account. That's why I've partnered with Edge Boost, the financial platform that pays me cash back to wager. Edge Boost is an online bank account that pays me for every deposit. With the Edge Boost Visa debit card, I get up to 0.5% cash back on all my sportsbook, daily fantasy site, and casino transactions. That's free cash back in my pocket just for doing what I'm already doing. Easy money. And this is not some credit card gimmick. Remember, this is a debit card. I opened my own Edge Boost debit card account. It took just 2 minutes, really quick. They made it a breeze to deposit into my DraftKings, my FanDuel, my Prize Picks, all of that. There was no hidden fees, no minimum balance requirements, none of those things. No catch. It was super easy. So if you're like me, you've ever had a sports book transaction flagged by your bank for suspicious activity, or you've been given a runaround by customer service, AI chatbots when you're trying to add some funds, I'm telling you the Edge Boost debit card is what you need. It starts with a $250,000 daily limit. And most importantly, it'll never be declined for gambling activity. It made my betting life a whole lot easier. It can do the same for you. Just visit edgeboost.bet to learn more. That's edgeboost.bet and use the promo code ACTION to start at tier 2 for faster bank deposits and more cash back. All right, Stuck, where are you going with your second pick?
Yeah, just add on to that. I use Edge Boost. It's not a gimmick at all. It doesn't cost anything, and any transactions are seamless. It's FDIC insured as well, and then you get just free cash. They make their money on the volume, so they're not making any money from you. You actually are you're getting cash back into your account, and you can use it actually at physical casinos as well. But just as far as sports books transactions, and we always preach shopping around, get the best number. You should have many. The ease of it, and they have relationships with all of them. It's so easy to do. It's so easy to sign up, and yeah, there's no reason not to use it. Love Edge Boost. All right, for my second pick of the Super Bowl Sunday six pack, I'm going with Dallas Goedert over 50 reception yards, 50 plus, minus 122 at FanDuel. You're probably going to tell me this number's inflated. I don't care. I love this matchup for Goddard. 50's, 50-ish is probably, it's really as high as I wanted to go. 50, 51, I guess is fine. But I like this for a few reasons. One, Goddard's been on fire since he came back from injury, looks fully healthy. He has over his past 7 games, he's averaged 4.5 catches on 5.5 targets for 51.5 yards. Also mentioned game script, like Philadelphia not as likely to be leading in this game as they have been. So you might see more Hurts pass attempts. You also could see Kansas City play man, which they normally do at, an above average league rate, especially in the playoffs. Goddard is a monster against man, leads all tight ends in yards per route run, nearly 4 yards per route run. Chiefs, very good against outside receivers. They're probably going to blitz a lot, play a lot of man. Hurts going to have to get rid of the ball quickly. I think Goddard's going to be the recipient of that. And the Chiefs just aren't as good at defending wide receivers or tight ends that aren't on the outside. And Goddard, he's going to line up just as on the inline a bunch, and he's going to get a number of targets here. Even if you look at games where Brown and Smith and Goddard all played, which didn't, it was only about a third of their games this year.
Yeah.
Goddard was number 2 in target rate. And Goddard, I mentioned this before the conference championship, he always shows up in playoff games. In his 8 career playoff games, he's averaged 6 catches on 7.8 targets for 64.4 yards. Median, about 5.5 catches on 6.5 targets for about 60 yards. He's gone. I also bet his over catches as well, which is getting a little expensive out there. But he's gone over. He's got at least 5 catches in 6 out of 8 playoff games. He's had at least 50 yards in 6 out of 8 playoff games. Chiefs are also bad against tight ends. They allow about 6 receptions to tight ends per game. So I think Goddard's going to end up with, you're going to get, I think they're going to be some screens for him, some quick passes. And then I think he's probably going to hit some explosives as well. So I think he's going to end up with, I don't know, 6-ish catches on the day, which I think should get him to at least 50. I know this prop is very popular. I kept getting messages because all these sports books are tweeting out Goddard is the most popular prop. I was just tweeting about it the entire conference championship game that we just get to bet Goddard props again. So I apologize if I was driving some of that. But yeah, I think Goddard's in line for a big day here, game script wise, matchup wise, and he always shows up in the playoffs. I think he has a big day.
Yeah, I think so. I actually have him about 54 average, so the median right around that 50 number. So I actually don't think he's inflated. I think he's fairly priced, which I mean for an over, it's actually hard to find in the Super Bowl just because there's so much public money coming in. It's mostly on overs, but I think he is the most likely Eagle pass catcher to be like unaffected by the rest of the game plan because there's a couple ways this could go. I'm curious to see if you have any thoughts on this, but one possible matchup is you could go McDuffie shadow Devontae Smith because McDuffie can go in the slot. Smith goes in the slot quite a bit. And because Smith is the number 2 receiver, you might just trust McDuffie one-on-one. So, and then you're essentially bracketing Brown. Jalen Watson's been really good since he came back. So you're probably using him and then some type of help or bracket on him. And Dotson, you're going to obviously leave in single coverage either way. But either way, that doesn't really affect Goddard. And you could also just go more straight up. You could go more zone. You could go shadow Brown with McDuffie and, maybe try to bracket Smith. Like there's a lot of ways you could go. Any thoughts on how they're going to play? There's obviously they're going to mix it up, but any thoughts of like what the main tactic is going to be against Brown and Devontae Smith?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that you probably want McDuffie on Brown more times than not. But I mean, I know that they're going to mix it up. And just the thing that I always know about the Chiefs and what makes them so great is like whatever you just saw or think
Mm-hmm.
you're going to see, you're probably not going to see, which makes it tougher. Um, so yeah, that it makes it very difficult to project, and that's part of their greatness. Why? What do you think? What do you think
I
they're going to end up doing?
I think it's going to be McDuffie on Smith. I think they're going to use multiple people on Brown because I think Brown is more times than not going to be ahead of Smith in the progression. I think they want to try to get Hurts to throw into a crowd. I think like they want to try to get a turnover, but not like sacrifice defense to do it. I think you could trust McDuffie as the number one corner on Smith, who number one quality receiver, but still the number two here. I think you could trust him in some one-on-ones there. And that even maybe, because like Goddard's going to be active too. So there's going to be times where it's going to be Bolton or Reed or whoever on Goddard. So maybe even open it up to kind of, whether you want to give help on him, spy, just a Barkley watcher, like play it like Marshall Falk. I just think that they're going to probably go single coverage somewhere. And I would think McDuffie on Smith gives them the best shot. So that's just my prediction. I do think there's going to be a lot of mixing it up and whatnot, but I would say the most snaps. I'm expecting something to that extent with those guys. So I could see Smith having a big game. Kind of, he's like the guy we expected to have big games in the other spots, and he really hasn't. But I could actually see him kind of doing it this one. And I think they might try to. I think Dotson probably gets over his point, whatever it is, half a yard prop, because they'll probably knowing Spags, they'll probably try to force the ball to guys that you don't want to throw to. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised either on either end, offensively, defensively. The Chiefs are going to have something on both sides of the ball that
Yep.
we're not expecting. They have 2 weeks to prepare. We're not expecting, like last week, it was the Mahomes designed runs, right? And that's part of what makes them great in the playoffs is they kind of just do enough to win during the regular season. And look, they're now healthier on the offensive side of the ball, but they definitely hold some things back that they don't need to show during the regular season. And now with 2 weeks to prepare for this game, you're gonna see even more wrinkles. I was very intrigued by what the Chiefs were planning on doing with the offensive line with 2 weeks to prepare.
Same. I thought they
But
might
Reed
go back
came,
to Tooney at sack.
but Reed
Guard.
came out and said Tooney's going to stay at left tackle. So, which I was surprised at because the Chiefs' running game, it's not like Tooney's been amazing and he's getting help at left tackle. It's stabilized a little bit. Mahomes looks more comfortable with him there, but it's really hurt their run game. Like their run game has become much less efficient with Caliendo at left guard and Tooney at left tackle. But being a bad tackle situation can ruin the
Yeah.
game. So I guess they feel more comfortable, and that it might just mean that they go more pass heavy here, which we've seen from Mahomes in the playoffs in the past. But their run game's definitely suffered with Tooney kicking out to left tackle.
That's a great segue then for my second pick in the fourth overall of the Super Bowl 59 six-pack. I'm going with the Kansas City Chiefs under 115.5 rushing yards. You can find that at Bet365. I've seen it under 110, 109, like that as well. I have them actually projected for about 100 rushing yards. So I think this line is inflated. You're essentially banking on an explosive from somebody, but let's look at this by the numbers. So Kansas City's had 101 or fewer rushing yards in exactly half of Mahomes' starts, but the Eagles' defense has been really good against the run. They're allowing just 104.4 per game. Only 5 times have they given up more than 113 rushing yards in a game. And then, as you mentioned it, Joe Tooney, run blocking grade at guard 76.5, according to PFF. That's top 15 out of 83 qualified guards. Once he went to tackle, that dropped to 58.9. That would knock him out of the top 50. And then Caliendo's been even worse. He just a 50.4. So you go from, kind of a stronger interior to just that left side really not being able to run block at both spots. And as you mentioned, that has hurt the run game here. And the fact that they are going to continue to start Tooney at left tackle does kind of say, we know where our bread is buttered. It's Mahomes. The Chiefs will have probably some creative concepts to get the run game going. That'll probably involve Worthy, maybe a mystery skill player that we don't even know, maybe a Marquise Brown, somebody with speed. They'll try to get him a carry or two as well. But it's been I've talked about Pacheco. It's been a struggle for him. But his props are just kind of squeezing it now. Like they're down to 5.5 carries, which is I think where it should be. So I'm taking the team here because you have a few outs here. Number one, Chiefs, win or lose, probably need to have success in the passing game. Might not lead as much as usual here. That could affect it. Uh, in addition to the tackles, you also have a situation where if the Chiefs are winning, Mahomes, and we've talked about this, he tends to have these long kneel downs sometimes to waste clock or just to get the ball, to get the offense in the right spot late in the game. And we've seen in the playoffs his kneel downs yardage is about double the loss it is in the regular season. So there's quite a few ways for this to hit, but just looking at it on the surface level, I mean, you expect Mahomes to have probably 30-ish rushing yards. You expect Hunt to have 40, 45, Pacheco about 20, and maybe Worthy gets a carry or two. That's not getting up to 110, 115 rushing yards. So I think the median here is a lot lower. I think you're really banking on like an explosive, probably by Mahomes or like a Worthy, even to get close to this, because I don't think the running backs, especially with Caliendo at guard against this line with Carter on the inside and all those guys. I just think it's going to be really tough to run here. So Chiefs under
Or if it's a
115 and a
blowout, which I
half.
don't think neither of us think it's going to be.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So it's, I mean, and yes, and some of the ball, I mean, Washington ended up running like what 4 or 5 straight times at the end of the game with Eckler. I think they even got a first down doing it last week. So even that, it's like, that's going into Philly's defense that kind of not indicative. So yeah, like the Chiefs to go under their rushing yardage, 115 and a half at bet 365.
All right.
All right.
Well, that is a good segue into mine because I have something similar, scary, but for my third pick of Super Bowl Sunday six pack, I'm going with Patrick Mahomes' longest rush under 13 and a half yards. I think this opened at some places at 10 and a half, which I thought was fair. But now this is a popular prop, so I think that this is one where a lot of people are betting it and we're getting some inflation. Oh, but I'm curious to ask you, do you think that this is the peak, or do you think we could go higher?
It is popular, so I mean, 14 and a half would be way like that would just be out there, but I don't have enough off the top of my head memory to say like Super Bowl, or even I don't know if we have enough data to say like they'll climb even higher in Super Bowl props, but I could, because it's just so much public money, I could see it get to 14 and a half, but 13 and a half is already plenty. I have just projecting his normal numbers, and I'm actually a little over the market in his rushing yards, but I told you like all that factors in his projected attempts, yardage, all that. I have him a 61% chance to go under the 13 and a half. So every yard in this market is crucial. So
Yep.
it might not be the peak. There's a chance, but either way, I wouldn't hesitate to play this at 13 and a half.
So just to put some numbers, I've heard a lot of people say, well, the running quarterbacks have gone over. Well, they played the two best, most mobile quarterbacks 4 times in Lamar Jackson and Jane Daniels, who did have, they went over 3 of the 4 games and they had rushes of at least 14 yards in 3 of the 4 games, but they ran the ball 30 total times and they only had 3 rushes of more than 13 and a half yards. That's 10% of their carries. If you look at every other quarterback on the schedule, 54 rush attempts, and this includes some kneel downs, but that's in what I'm going to get to. That's included in Mahomes' rush attempt number. One quarterback rushed for more than 13 and a half yards on 54 attempts. So in total, they've allowed 4 rushes of more than 13 and a half yards to opposing quarterbacks in 84 carries. That's less than 5% of the time. But if you just say, hey, look, let's assume Mahomes is Lamar or Daniels, which he's not mobility wise. He's not going to, he doesn't scramble as much. He's not as fast. But let's just assume that he's on their level, running wise and volume wise. I think he would need 8 or 9 carries. Now he could do it once and get it. If it's like a 3rd and 17, we've seen Mahomes do it. But I'm just saying, I think if you play this game out hundreds of times, I think that he would normally need 8-ish carries to get this. Like he would probably get it 1 out of every 8 carries, is what I'm assuming. Now, if you look Mahomes' career, he has 540 rush attempts in his career total, playoff, regular season. He's had a rush of more than 13 and a half yards 54 times, 10% of the time. Um, and he's averaged a little over 4 rushes per game, again, including kneel downs. But you might say, okay, in the playoffs, his he ups his rush rate. Well, in the playoffs, he has 108 total rush attempts, and so he's averaged about 5.5 rushes per game, again, including kneel down, so a little bit more. But he's ran for over 13 and a half yards 10 times. So about 9% of the time. So again, 1 out of every 9, 1 out of every 10 carries he goes over this. He's playing a defense that doesn't give up explosive plays, keeps everything in front of them. You're not going to see like a ton of man and blitzes where you could have some breakdowns where Mahomes could scramble for 20, 30. Now we've seen him do it. He certainly could. But um, even if you look this year, he's done it. He's had a rush of at least 13 and a half yards in 5 out of 18 games, 5 out of 76 carries. That's 1 out of about 15. And he's done it in less than half of his playoff games. And I think this is a matchup where not only are you less likely to have a long broken run, but you're also playing an offense that, like the Chiefs, can control the ball. So there might not be as many opportunities for Mahomes, who usually has the ball the majority. They are the time possession monster. We got 2 time possession monsters here. Like the Eagles could go on a 8 to 10 minute drive at some point in the game, and that's just eating up some potential rushing opportunities for Mahomes. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of value in this number. Um, in his career, he has gone over, he's had a rush of at least 13 and a half yards in 46 of 132 games. About 35% of his games he's done this. So yeah, I think this number is too high. Obviously, he could do it on the first drive, and it will be terrible. But I think this is inflated, and yeah, I think 13 and a half is too high. I just haven't placed it yet because I'm trying to figure out if it does go to 14 and a half or not. So it's something I'm monitoring, but it'll come in on the app, and was glad to hear that you show value on it too.
Yeah, this is one of those classic ones that's inflated. Mahomes ran a lot last game. He had some of those plays like those RPOs where he pulled it and ran, hadn't really shown that. So I think a lot of that was kind of done for tendency reasons too, and not necessarily like, oh, they're just going to continue to run him at that level in this
Well, plus, what did we
game.
just talk about the Chiefs? Like what you just saw is what you're not likely to
Yes.
see again, right? So now they showed that. It's kind of a surprise to the Bills. And the Eagles just saw it. They have 2 weeks to prepare. The Chiefs probably have another wrinkle. Um, and it might not involve running Mahomes as much. But I like the matchup as well and the number. And yeah, I just think it's too high. I just hope it's not like a you just hope there's not a like I'll be watching the entire game praying that there's not like a third and
And 15.
13.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Third
yeah.
and 13, because then he's probably going to get it by a yard. Um, so yeah, that's what I'll be rooting against. The 3rd and 13 where Mahomes runs down the sideline and it looks like he knows exactly how fast to run every single time. He's just doesn't matter if it's a defensive lineman, a linebacker, or a D-back. He's just one step ahead of them somehow
Yep.
and goes down the sideline and gets the first down by a yard. So that's what I'll be looking to avoid. Um, but yeah, under 13 and a half longest rush.
All right, for my third pick and the sixth overall of the Super Bowl 59 six pack, I'm going with both teams to combine for under 5.5 sacks. You can find us at minus 125 at BetMGM. I have the true odds closer
I
to,
can't wait to hear this one because
yeah.
this is crazy to me.
Yeah, so I have this closer to minus 200, and the thing is, you had like a monster sack game for the Chiefs defense in the playoffs, and then you had a monster sack game for Jalen Hurts in the playoffs. But overall, both of these offenses have been getting the ball out quicker. If you look at Jalen Hurts, once it became a talking point after that, Rams game, in the conference championship, he got it out in 2.96 on average. Only the second time since week 8 that he's had an average time to throw of under 3 seconds per. So I think that's going to be a big talking point here. Get the ball out. And Mahomes, we know that, the one thing that has been consistent of late is they've transitioned to more short passing offense as well, quicker strike offense. So his time to throw average has been 2.65 seconds with an ADOT of 6.5 since Marquise Brown came back 4 games ago, compared to 2.79 with an ADOT of 6.9 prior to that. So both of these quarterbacks, I have them taking just under 2.5 sacks. So when you kind of, work out all the probabilities, you're going to get 5 or fewer, quite a bit. And I think that's kind of being undervalued here. And if you look at that past Super Bowl that these two teams played, there's only 2 total sacks, and that's with the Eagles throwing a lot more than they have in the past. So I think it's going to be a big kind of talking point. Get the ball out quick for both of these teams, because Hurts, the one thing that's really been hurting them that he's been doing is he's been taking these sacks, knocking them out of field goal range. I think he's going to try to they're going to make sure he has outlets, to throw the ball away here. He'll also be a little healthier. And then Mahomes, he's not going to go down very often. And another thing with the Chiefs, what you always could help is when Mahomes gets sacked, he might not really get sacked because he might get a cheap penalty as well. So I just think that, it's kind of been a talking point here. It's kind of one of those things where you look at these offensive lines on the interior and you say, oh man, this is going to lead to more sacks. But if you kind of look when you have these kind of weaknesses and you have time to scheme them up, that's what you're going to do. You're going to kind of scheme against it. So I think you're going to see a lot of like outside pressures and to try to get them to step up into the interior pressure, but that's going to leave guys hot, right off the ball on the outside. So I think both of these quarterbacks, that's going to be a big point of emphasis here. But you could have, depending on the game script, either one of these quarterbacks take no sacks. I think Mahomes took none in that last Eagles Super Bowl, and they led the league.
Yeah, but the last Super Bowl, the field conditions were horrendous.
Yeah, that's true.
No one could get a pass rush.
Yeah, but I think Hurts actually was hurt from the snow. Like I think the field conditions being good actually help him but either way, I just think both of these quarterbacks can escape pressure. Both of these teams, interior pressure is going to be an issue, so they're going to scheme around it. And I just think you have two of the better, two pretty good offensive schemers, especially on the Chiefs side. So I think you could have one quarterback with one or no sacks, and then I just don't think Hurts in this game is going to be a game where they let him, sit there, take 4 or 5 sacks. So yeah, again, that's why it's over. That's why I think it's inflated, because it's hard to look like if you just look at it, on the surface level, you're like, oh man, this game's probably gonna have a lot of sacks, a lot of great interior rushes here. But I think that's what's going to be schemed around. I think that's where you're going to see rushing attempts come in. That's where you're going to see some of these, short, quick passes. So anyway, I have it.
Well, hopefully
about 2-1,
and that would Goddard would be the benefit of that.
Yeah, no, yeah, he will. And that's
what I'm banking on. But my fear is just that if the Chiefs are ahead and they're bringing the blitz, Hurts holds the ball for so long. Like, I mean, we've seen games this year where he's had 6, 7 sacks on his own.
Yeah.
That would be, and then Mahomes' pressure to sack rate has gone up this year. We've seen some games a couple times where he's been sacked 5 times. I mean, I get the Panthers. That was an odd one when he sacked 5 times, I think, against the Panthers. So, yeah, it's scary. I get it from a numbers perspective.
I mean,
but Hurts holds the ball so long against Spags, and if they're in a trailing game script, like, how many sacks could he rack up late?
That's why we're getting a little bit of value here.
I get it. Yeah, I'm just making the.
Yeah.
playing
Yeah. I
devil's
mean,
advocate.
I'm also the guy that bet no missed kicks at like 2-1 when after Elliott missed all these kicks. So yeah, like I mean, that's where you got to kind of find value here. A lot of the best numbers, like Kerner and I will have to do our another prop show, but a lot of these numbers, we're just kind of waiting for them to inflate and kind of trying to hit the unders on them. So like for some of the unders that we find now, you got to kind of dig a little deeper into these team props. But the player props, I think those we'll probably hit those like like you said, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yep.
All right,
Um,
is that's 3 and 3? We did three each, right?
yep.
All right. Any final thoughts on the game? We'll have our long shot. We hit last week, so we'll have that. But any final thoughts on this matchup?
No, I mean, I think that there's not too much to say. I mean, there's a lot of it is just you're going to have some wrinkles that no one can anticipate. It's the biggest game of the season. There's 2 weeks to prepare. You have some good coordinators in this game, so a lot of it we're not going to know. But we've seen so many Chiefs games that they're becoming predictable and they're exciting, but like it'll be a close game. Now, obviously, that it doesn't have to play out this way, but a lot of times it's just going to be a close game. They're probably going to make good adjustments at halftime, and in order to beat them in the playoffs, you have to kill them. You have to put them out of their misery and score to go up like 2 possessions with 5 minutes to go because you can't give them the ball late um, and down by 1 possession because you give Mahomes 4 downs, say this every year, they're probably going to go down and score. And then also you have Spagnola, who will have some tendency breaking blitzes in his back pocket that he will probably hold for high leverage moments. We saw that against Josh Allen late, that could end up getting a key stop late against Hurts, who does hold the ball a little too long at times. So, yeah, I mean, I think that this game is, I think it's going to be close. I think the Eagles have the better roster, but the better coach and quarterback in these Chiefs games has prevailed almost every time. Probably happens again. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that the Chiefs are going to try to focus on taking away Barkley as they should. Get into passing downs. That's when your blitz and aggression can really fluster Hurts. So how much what can Barkley do? How many long runs can he break? How many game-changing plays can he have against this Chiefs defense? Because you got to remember, Washington's defense is horrendous. The Packers defense pretty beat up. I mean, it's not the Eagles faced a really easy schedule of opposing defenses. While I think the Chiefs defense is overrated, it's still a good defense, and it's still a lot better than many of these defenses they faced throughout the season in the NFC, in their division in particular. And I mean, the Rams defense, not anything to write home about. So what can Barkley do? He's been Superman all year. Can he be Superman again? If not, Hurts gonna have to play like he did in that Super Bowl where he was outstanding a couple years ago. And guess what? I mean, he played almost flawless. It still wasn't enough. They still
Yeah.
lost by a field goal. So the good news is the Eagles' defense is better this year, and that defense is has proven to be elite. But it's Mahomes, and the Chiefs are going to find ways to attack, probably over the middle of the field a lot, if I had to guess. Um, an interesting, you mentioned Brown, maybe Sky Moore. A prop that's taken some sharp money is over 4.5 Chiefs rush attempts. So four and a half players to
Yeah.
rush the ball. So you figure Worthy. Now his prop is probably a little too inflated for my life. Now it's like 5.5 rushing yards.
Yeah.
Um, I don't want to bet the under, but I think it's probably properly priced now. Like it was 2.5 last week. Um, but Worthy's probably going to get a carry. Pacheco, Hunt, Mahomes.
Mahomes.
So do you think a fifth I mean, you could always have one of their tight ends run the ball with a quarterback sneak,
Yeah, P Ryan
which
could
could
get a,
happen.
a draw
Yeah,
on
does
a
P Ryan? Do
passing
you think
down.
P Ryan gets one, or and is it another receiver? Like, what do you think about that over four and a half
I
rush attempt
I
players?
think that would be the sharp side because yeah, like I said, I think you could see a surprise guy like maybe a Marquise Brown, somebody else with speed, but yeah, you could. It's P Ryan hasn't really been touching the ball lately in the run game, so you could always get, especially if they're planning on going for it on fourth, if you get like a third and medium, third and long situation, maybe they give a draw play to P Ryan. He seems to be the guy that catch defenses off guard when he does get the ball. So yeah, I would go over 4.5
Yeah, some
on
people
that.
were saying we're talking about Wentz if it's a block getting
I
kneels.
doubt that. I
It's the
think they leave
Super
Mahomes.
Bowl.
Yeah, they'll leave
You gotta
Mahomes
have
out there to
Mahomes.
celebrate. Yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah,
can't have Wentz at the end of the season taking the
yeah.
knee.
I mean, I get it because it's
Um,
Philly, but yeah, no.
yeah. I mean maybe Wentz takes a
The first
knee.
half.
No, I mean like if you're taking two knees, I don't know. Do they let him go out and take
Nah,
one, and
nah,
then
that would be
Mahomes comes
weird.
in?
That would be
You can't
weird.
really do that. So
Nah, yeah.
yeah, I don't think Wentz is in play. What about another popular one, especially because we have Philly in the Philly special, and then the Chiefs who could do some interesting things over, basically another player attempting a pass.
That's what I was thinking about. And usually it would like the Chiefs haven't really taken the ball out of Mahomes' hands, so you're looking probably more toward the Eagles. And the Eagles I think they had a Barkley attempt, but he got sacked. But I would lean toward no, only because we've seen um most of the teams that have done it, especially against the Chiefs, have had like they've done it more in the regular season, whereas like the Eagles, they just had that one Barkley attempt that he didn't even let the ball go. So that's also like that means they actually have discipline. Like they're not just like the Lions, like, oh, we're just gonna toss it up. So I would probably lean no. I get it. It's probably gonna be one of those. So it's gonna be bet to the over. But I would lean no. Yeah, I would lean no. I think the best chance you have is probably if Hurts picks up an injury or something like that. Just having to run the ball, or maybe the pass rush gets to him, whatever. So you have a
Yeah.
chance, but yeah, I'd lean toward no because I don't. I think just like the Chiefs don't really sneak, they're not really trying to take the ball out of Mahomes' hands on any pass. And then the Eagles, I just don't see they tend to play risk averse. I just don't see why they could. They would be the more likely team, but I don't see it personally. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have a strong feel, but I know people love to bet that one. Um, I the other thing is so the hardest team to project, one of the hardest teams in my opinion is the Chiefs. Their receivers, their running backs. So, do you have any thoughts on just the target share, like Hopkins versus Schuster? Like, is Hopkins just out now? Like, is he just not going to
So
get
he's
targets? Is he?
he's kind of knocked down to the fourth receiver, and he's at least for that last game. So I think the issue is Philadelphia. Like they don't blitz as much. They're probably not going to blitz as much, but they also play a lot of man, even though they don't blitz as much. So that's really been Worthy in this postseason. It's been Worthy, the guy that they've been looking to against man coverage, and then Brown, can separate as well sometimes. So I think if Philly goes zone heavier than usual, maybe. But yeah, I think Hopkins. I'll actually have a long shot bet on him. I do think he's a little undervalued, but it's going to come down to situational variance because he's a part of the red zone package. But because they still do play Noah Gray, even if he's not catching passes, it's not. Brown and Worthy take precedence just because they have that speed. So they're the top two receivers, and then Hopkins is just kind of getting where he fits in the 1-1 on other downs, either in the red zone or late third down. So he could run 20 routes, but he could also run like 10. So I still think it will be Worthy, Brown, and Kelsey. We'll see the most volume. That's just kind of how I see it, just based on this how good this Eagles defense is. I think you're going to need your speed separators, and then anytime they play zone, you look for Kelsey. So yeah.
Yeah. And then the infamous Noah Gray. So Is he just now a blocker, or do the Chiefs again? The Chiefs change tendencies. So, like I was tempted to go
Yep.
back to Gray. I saw
Yeah.
Kerner loves Gray
Under.
under.
I saw that too.
Um,
I was surprised he
I
liked
don't.
it
I'm
that
not
early
sure.
in the week, but I mean, I do have him a little under. I think the market isn't fully taking into account his, his role did change since Marquise Brown has come back.
Yeah.
He's been blocking a lot more, and they've just been playing a lot fewer two tight end sets. So that, which is why Hopkins, you also see, it's just like all these guys are getting squeezed. There's just, you can only play so much 1-1 and so much 1-2 in a given game. So it's just kind of, it's going to come down to variance a little bit, but yeah, I'm actually fairly in line with the market. I could see an anytime touchdown though for Gray. I think that's something that people are just down on him in general. Maybe that'll have a little bit of value because most of the touchdowns get bet up. But I could see Noah Gray having a role here. Just like you said, middle of the field, linebackers, safeties, still the Eagles' weaker points on defense if you're going to call it that. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I do think game plan wise, it's still going to be Worthy, Brown, Kelsey. Like I don't think that's going to change. It's just how often do they get him off those reads?
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of these, it's very interesting to me because I can make you a lot of the case for, you want to wait till late in the week and then look at some unders. And then you have two teams that are ball control offenses. Who, but the Eagles are, I think the Eagles are more likely to hit explosive plays
Yes.
than the Chiefs. The Chiefs, one of the least explosive offenses in the NFL. The Eagles give up nothing explosive wise. So, from a play volume perspective, the Chiefs might have the edge in a battle of two teams that are time of possession kings. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I actually took Chiefs. They were actually plus money at the time. I took them. They're still 115. I still like them up to about 125, but I took the Chiefs to have more first downs for that same reason. Like evenly matched game, you know, which team like the if you expect a similar score, similar yardage numbers on both sides, which team is likely to be more explosive? It's the Eagles. Which team is likely to have to go up and down the field more? It's the Chiefs. So yeah, same. Their
That's still
volume
plus money out
numbers.
there. I like that.
I no, I think it's minus 150 now. I got it at
Uh,
plus money, but it's still a little bit of value. But yeah, I do think the Chiefs are more likely to hit those volume numbers, whereas the Eagles, it's going to come down to Saquon explosives, Hurts explosives, receipt like Brown and Smith explosives. The more explosive those guys hit, the more unders you're going to see volume wise. I think.
yeah.
All right, let's
Special teams, by the way, I have them rated pretty evenly across the board. I thought about an Ariza over longest punt, but just like the potential limited number of possessions,
Yep, and punts. Yeah.
scare me a bit. Um, but I had the special the one wild card is like where's Elliott's head at? Um,
So
but
he had all of his he only had one miss indoors, I believe. So most of his misses have been outdoors. That's something to kind of watch. I wonder too. That's something where I think that could hurt the Eagles. Like if because usually they're just conservative and they'll, Hurts does take some plays or some sacks out of field goal range at times. Like, are they content with just going for those field goals, or do they go for it on fourth more? Now to because that could get them in trouble. That they're normally efficient time of possession offense. If they turn it over on downs, they don't really turn the ball over. Period. So that's something that could hurt them. But it is worth noting that most of Elliott's issues have been outdoors in weather. All right. So to recap the six pack, Stuck has the Eagles on the first half spread plus 1.5 minus 125. Dallas Goedert over 49.5 receiving yards at minus 122. And Patrick Mahomes under 13.5 for his longest rush. You can find that about minus 114 in the market. I have the Chiefs to go under 115.5 rushing yards at minus 115. Total sacks under 5.5 for both teams combined at minus 125. Like that up to just under minus 200. Showing a lot of value on that one. And then the Chiefs money line at minus 124. All right. So we'll get into our long shot money line parlay here. And Just want to remind everyone that now is the perfect time to upgrade to an Action Pro subscription. It's the only way to get real-time pick alerts from me, Stuckey, and Super Bowl prop master Sean Kerner, plus all of the tools that you need to turn a profit betting in 2025. Right now, new subscribers can get $40 off a year of Action Pro at actionnetwork.com/SB. That's $40 off for the full year, so you'll be covered for the Super Bowl, March Madness, MLB, NBA, and even next college football and NFL seasons as well. So don't wait. Visit actionnetwork.com/SB to get $40 off Action Pro. All right, Stuck, we hit last week with your worthy anytime touchdown and Philadelphia to have more punts in that game. That was a sweat. Came down to the fake. But
There's only 3 punts, right? Total in that game?
Yeah. And Washington would have 2 if not for the fake. So that was clutch. But where are you going this week?
Back to the well. Worthy anytime touchdown. I mean, look, he has the most red zone touchdowns on the team this year, receiving. And if you look at his target share in his targets per route run in the red zone, he's just below Kelsey.
Yep.
Like he's 27%. Kelsey's at 29%. And what's Kelsey priced anytime touchdown? Plus 130?
Yeah.
120?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And you can get plus 165 on Worthy. I think this should be like, so obviously not as much value as last week, plus 200, or the week before where I bet him. But I think this should be like plus 140-ish. And he's getting rush attempts in the red zone. There's multiple ways that he can get there, and we always talk about this. The Chiefs are consolidating who they get the ball to. Worthy's one of those primary targets. So, and down in the red zone, those outside corners are really good for the Eagles. Their run D is really good. The Chiefs haven't been able to run the ball well, so I think once they get down towards the goal line, probably have a couple different plays with Worthy, either in motion or just getting him in favorable matchups. So I think this is a good chance of hitting. So yeah, let's go back to the well with Worthy plus 165 anytime touchdown. I'd play this down to like even 150. That's as far as I'd go.
Yeah, I mean he's clearly opened up their offense down there in the red zone. So I'm actually going to go in a different direction because I do show value on Hopkins. So I'm trying to figure out how to play him. So let's go with Hopkins anytime touchdown here at plus 600. I have his true odds closer to plus 430 here. And again, he's a guy that he's not necessarily going to see consistent usage between the 20s. That's just not who he is these days, especially with Brown healthy. That's just not the receiver that's just not how they're using him. But in the red zone, especially now that you have to account for Worthy, you have to account for Brown a little bit more, even though he's not a prototypical red zone receiver. And you have to account for Mahomes' legs. There's just a lot here. So Hopkins, I think he can get into the end zone here. If you look at who's been the most targeted Eagle on defense, it's been Darius Slay. Hopkins does run more routes towards Slay's side of the field, and Slay's been targeted 17 times by receivers alone and then 22 times in total this postseason. That leads the Eagles. So I think Hopkins could very well get into the end zone here. I know he's been a popular play on like the over 1.5 catches and whatnot. There's a lot of variance there, but I think the best bang for your buck here is going to be Hopkins here. So we'll go Worthy at plus 165, Hopkins at 6-1. That will be plus 1755 for a parlay. And for that, you might as well add Mahomes over 1.5 touchdowns too, because he would need it for the parlay, but
not necessarily. Worthy could get one rushing.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that is true. Very true. But yeah, so I like Hopkins here. I think this is probably the best way to play him. And Worthy, yeah, he's been a staple, and they're going to need his speed. So
yeah, I can see them having something near at the pylon or a fade for Hopkins.
Yeah, or pick play. That's really what it usually comes down to these days. Most teams aren't throwing the fades as much, but you get a pick play. That's anybody. It doesn't have to be the number one guy anymore. So Juju's always a threat too. But all right, that is going to do it for us here on the Action Network podcast. Thanks for listening to Stuckey and I for the entire NFL season. It's our 6th consecutive. It's been a pleasure, Stuck, and all season long. You can hear Stuck talking college hoops over at the Big Bets on Campus podcast. I'm with Sean Kerner on the Fantasy Flex, and we'll be doing episodes all season long for that. Stuck is on X at Stuckey2. I'm at Chris Raybon. We're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and let's get this money.
Let go.